The stars had always promised peace. For 200 years, humanity had believed that promise. They had joined the galactic concord with open hearts and hopeful minds. They had shared their technology, their culture, their dreams. They had called the aliens their friends, their brothers, their family among the stars. They had been fools. Admiral Helena Vance stood on the observation deck of the space station New Geneva. Behind her, diplomats from 12 species gathered for the annual summit. Laughter filled the air. Glasses clinked together. The Velkari ambassador, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms, raised a toast to eternal friendship between their peoples. Helena smiled and raised her own glass. The Velkari had been humanity's closest allies for 2 centuries. They had fought together, built together, dreamed together. When humanity first reached the stars, the Velkari were the first to welcome them. They taught humans how to travel faster than light. They shared the secrets of the galaxy. They called humans their little brothers. The wine tasted sweet on Helena's tongue. She did not know it would be the last peaceful moment of her life. 3,000 light years away, on the human colony of New Eden, a mother was putting her children to bed. She told them stories of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests, of a home they had never seen. Her daughter asked if they would ever visit Earth. The mother smiled and said, "Maybe someday, when you are older." The Velkari warship appeared in the sky without warning. Its weapons were already charged. The mother had just enough time to hold her children close before the fire came down. Across human space, the same scene played out again and again. On 14 different worlds, Velkari ships emerged from hiding and opened fire. They knew exactly where to strike. They knew the patrol schedules, the defense codes, the weak points in every shield. They knew because humanity had trusted them with everything. The attack was perfect. It was surgical. It was absolute betrayal. On New Geneva, Helena's communicator screamed with emergency signals. She dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the floor, red liquid spreading like blood. Around her, the Velkari diplomats were smiling. They were still smiling. "What have you done?" Helena whispered. The Velkari ambassador looked at her with those cold silver eyes. "What we should have done long ago," he said. "Humans spread too fast. You breed too quickly. You adapt too well. In another century, you would have dominated this galaxy. We simply could not allow that." Helena reached for her sidearm. A Velkari guard was faster. The shot hit her shoulder, and she fell to the ground. Pain exploded through her body, but she did not scream. She would not give them that satisfaction. "The Concord has agreed," the ambassador continued. "Humanity is a threat to galactic stability. Your expansion ends today. Your species ends today." Through the observation window, Helena could see Velkari warships surrounding the station. Earth hung in the distance, blue and beautiful and completely unaware of the horror that was coming. The first missiles hit Earth's orbital defense grid 17 minutes later. Marcus Chen was eating dinner with his family when the sirens started. His wife dropped her fork. His daughter, only 7 years old, asked what that sound meant. Marcus knew. Every soldier knew that sound. "Get to the shelter," he said. His voice was calm even though his heart was racing. "Now, run." They ran. Through the streets of Mars Colony 7, past neighbors who were also running, past buildings that would not exist in an hour. Marcus carried his daughter on his shoulders. His wife held his hand so tight it hurt. The shelter was underground, built into the red rock of Mars. It was supposed to protect them from anything. That was what the engineers had promised. That was what everyone believed. The Velkari had helped design those shelters. They knew exactly how deep to strike. Marcus pushed his wife and daughter through the shelter door. "Get inside," he said. "I have to help the others." "Marcus, no." His wife grabbed his arm. "Stay with us." He looked at his daughter. She had his eyes, dark brown and full of questions. She was too young to understand what was happening, too young to know that the universe had just turned cruel and cold. "I'll come back," Marcus said. He kissed his wife. He kissed his daughter's forehead. "I promise. I'll come back." He never saw them again. The bomb hit the shelter 3 minutes after he left. Marcus was thrown to the ground by the blast. When he opened his eyes, there was only fire and smoke and screaming. Where the shelter had been, there was now a crater. Nothing could have survived. Marcus crawled to the edge of that crater. He screamed his wife's name. He screamed his daughter's name. He screamed until his throat was raw and bloody. No one answered. Around him, Mars Colony 7 was dying. Buildings collapsed. People burned. The sky was filled with Velkari ships, raining death upon everything humanity had built. Marcus should have died that day. Part of him wanted to die, but somewhere deep inside, in a place he did not know existed, something else was born. Something cold and hard and patient. Something that would not rest until every Velkari ship was dust and every Velkari leader answered for this day. He picked himself up from the ground. He found a weapon, and he started fighting. The 72 hours that followed were the darkest in human history. 14 colonies fell. Earth's defenses were shattered. 3 billion human beings died. Some were soldiers who fought to the last breath. Some were civilians who never had a chance. Some were children who did not understand why the sky was falling. The Galactic Concord did nothing. Humanity sent distress signals to every species in the Concord. They begged for help. They reminded their allies of treaties signed and promises made. They asked for the friendship that had been sworn under the light of 100 suns. The Thanari blocked their signals. The Morovi closed their borders. The Xanthus Collective released a statement expressing deep concern and did nothing else. Species that had traded with humans for generations, species that had attended human weddings and human funerals, species that had called humanity their partners and their friends, all of them turned away. Some did worse than nothing. Intelligence reports, shared with humanity in trust, found their way to Velkari commanders. Human escape routes were leaked. Human safe houses were exposed. The galaxy had not just abandoned humanity. The galaxy had helped murder them. Admiral Helena Vance survived the attack on New Geneva. A team of human marines fought through the station and pulled her from the wreckage. Her shoulder would never fully heal. A part of her soul would never heal either. She took command of what remained of humanity's fleet. It was not much. 200 ships against thousands. Outdated technology against Velkari weapons that seemed to know every human weakness. A scattered, traumatized population against a galaxy that wanted them dead. Any logical analysis said humanity was finished. The numbers were clear. The odds were impossible. Every strategic model predicted human extinction within 5 years. Helena Vance had never cared much for logical analysis. "We fall back," she ordered. "All ships, all colonies, all citizens. Fall back to the inner systems. Fall back to Sol. We make our stand there." Her officers looked at her with hollow eyes. "Admiral," one of them said, "if we retreat, we lose everything. The outer colonies, the mining stations, I know what we lose." Helena's voice was ice. "I know exactly what we lose, but we cannot win this war today. We cannot win it tomorrow, so we survive. We retreat, we hide, and we prepare." "Prepare for what, Admiral?" Helena turned to the viewport. Somewhere out there, Velkari ships were hunting the last human survivors. Somewhere out there, alien diplomats were dividing up human worlds like pieces of meat. Somewhere out there, a galaxy that had smiled at humanity for 200 years was celebrating their extinction. "Prepare for the day we make them regret this," she said. "Prepare for the day we show them what humanity really is. Prepare for the day we burn their worlds and shatter their fleets and make them understand that betraying humans was the worst mistake their species ever made." She turned back to her officers. In her eyes, they saw something new, something dangerous. something that made even battle-hardened soldiers feel a chill run down their spines. "The Conquered thinks we're finished," Helena said. "The Velkari think they've won. Let them think that. Let them celebrate. Let them grow comfortable and lazy and confident. And when they've forgotten to be afraid, when they've convinced themselves that humans are no longer a threat, that's when we return. That's when we remind them why they tried so hard to destroy us. That's when we show them that humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget, and humanity does not lose." The retreat was chaos. Human ships fled through space with Velkari hunters on their tails. Colonies were evacuated in hours, families grabbing whatever they could carry. Millions died trying to escape. Millions more were captured, taken to Velkari prison worlds where they would spend years in darkness and pain. But millions also made it to Sol. They came in battered ships and stolen freighters. They came wounded and broken and grieving. They came with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the fire in their hearts. Marcus Chen was among them. He had fought his way off Mars with 17 other survivors. He had killed more Velkari than he could count. He had watched friends die and enemies fall. When he finally reached Earth, he had not slept in 4 days. A medical officer tried to make him rest. Marcus refused. "Where do I sign up?" he asked. "Where do I go to fight?" The officer looked at him with tired eyes. "The fighting is over, son. We lost." Marcus grabbed the officer by the collar. "The fighting is not over," he said. His voice was quiet, but something in it made the officer go pale. "The fighting has just begun. Now tell me where I sign up or I'll find someone who will." He was assigned to the defense fleet, what was left of it. Old ships with old weapons, crewed by survivors who had lost everything. They patrolled the borders of Sol system, watching for Velkari scouts, waiting for an invasion that never came. The Velkari did not invade Sol. They did not need to. They had already won. Humanity was contained, broken, finished. The galaxy moved on. Trade routes were redrawn. Treaties were signed. Human space was divided among the Concord species like a carcass among vultures. 6 months after the attack, the Galactic Concord issued an official statement. They declared humanity a destabilizing influence and sanctioned further Velkari expansion into human territory. They called it necessary for galactic peace. They called it regrettable but unavoidable. They called it justice. Admiral Helena Vance read that statement in her quarters on Earth. She read it 3 times. Then she put down her datapad and walked to her window. Outside, the sun was setting over a wounded world. Cities that had stood for centuries were rubble. Oceans that had teemed with life were poisoned. A species that had dreamed of the stars was learning to hide in the shadows. Helena thought about her parents, who had died on New Geneva. She thought about the young officers she had trained, now floating dead in the void. She thought about 3 billion human beings who would never see another sunrise. And she thought about the future. Somewhere deep beneath the surface of Europa, in a facility that did not exist on any map, a message was waiting for her. A message from a shadow council that had been preparing for this day for 200 years. A message that contained the coordinates of hidden shipyards, the designs for weapons the galaxy had never seen, and a single word that would change everything. The word was Prometheus. Helena Vance opened her communicator. She sent a single message to Earth's United Defense Council. 5 words that would echo through history. They've made their choice. Now we make ours. In the ruins of Mars Colony 7, cleanup crews were still finding bodies. They worked in silence, marking each grave with a simple stone. Human, beloved, remembered. Marcus Chen stood among those stones. He had asked permission to return, to see what was left of his home. There was nothing left. The crater where the shelter had been was filled with rainwater now. Red dust covered everything. His wife and daughter had no graves because there was nothing to bury. He knelt in the dirt and picked up a small object. A toy rabbit, burned and broken. His daughter had called it Hoppy. She had carried it everywhere. She had been holding it when he left her at the shelter door. Marcus held that rabbit and did not cry. He had no tears left. He had only rage, cold and patient and infinite. He looked up at the sky, at the stars that had promised so much and delivered only death. "I'm coming for you," he whispered. "Every last one of you. I'm coming." The stars did not answer. They only watched, cold and distant, as humanity began its long climb out of darkness. The age of trust was over. The age of friendship was over. The age of hope was over. The age of vengeance was about to begin. 6 months of silence. 6 months of darkness. 6 months of nothing. The galaxy had moved on from humanity. News channels across 1,000 worlds spoke of the human crisis as ancient history. Economists discussed the redistribution of human trade routes. Politicians debated the ethics of the Concorde's decision. Historians were already writing books about the rise and fall of the human species. The Velkari High Command met in their grand chamber on Velkara Prime. Gold pillars rose to a ceiling painted with stars. Statues of ancient Velkari warriors stood along the walls. High Archon Theseus sat on his throne, surrounded by his generals and advisors. "Report," he commanded. General Voxus stepped forward. He was old for a Velkari, his silver skin faded to gray. He had led the attack on humanity. He had planned every strike, chosen every target. He considered it his greatest achievement. "The human threat is contained," Voxus said. "Our scouts report no military activity in Sol system. Their fleet is reduced to perhaps 200 ships, all outdated models. Their population has fallen below 8 billion. Their economy has collapsed. Their government is fractured." Theseus leaned forward. "And their communications? Silent. They have sealed their borders completely. No signals in or out, no trade requests, no diplomatic messages, nothing." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Velkari found this strange. Defeated species usually begged for mercy. They sent diplomats with offers of surrender. They negotiated. They bargained. They pleaded. Humans did none of these things. They simply went quiet. "Perhaps they are dying," suggested Admiral Kethis. She was younger than Voxus, ambitious and hungry for glory. "Perhaps they are fighting among themselves. Civil war, famine, disease, the natural end of a broken species." "Perhaps," Theseus said. But there was doubt in his voice. He had studied humans for decades. He had learned their history, their culture, their strange and dangerous psychology. Humans did not simply give up. They were not built that way. "Send more scouts," he ordered. "I want to know what is happening in human space. I want to know if they are building ships. I want to know if they are planning something. I want to know everything." The scouts were sent. 30 ships, crewed by Velkari Special Forces. The best pilots, the best sensors, the best technology the Dominion could provide. None of them returned. At first, the High Command assumed technical failures. Space was dangerous. Ships disappeared all the time. But 30 ships did not simply vanish. 30 ships did not all suffer technical failures at once. More scouts were sent. More scouts disappeared. The Velkari began to feel something they had not felt in centuries. They began to feel afraid. Deep in human space, far from any planet or star, there was a place that did not exist. No map showed it, no database recorded it. If you searched every human archive, every government file, every military record, you would find no mention of it. The facility was built into an asteroid in the Kuiper Belt. From the outside, it looked like any other rock drifting through the void. Inside, it was a city. Admiral Helena Vance walked through corridors carved from stone and metal. Workers rushed past her, carrying equipment and supplies. Engineers argued over blueprints. Soldiers trained in vast underground chambers. The air hummed with energy and purpose. "How many ships?" she asked the man walking beside her. Director Samuel Okonkwo was old, older than Helena by 20 years. He had white hair and dark skin and eyes that had seen too much. He had been waiting his entire life for this moment. 847, he said. All completed and combat ready. Another 200 in final construction. We will have over 1,000 by the end of the year. Helena stopped walking. She looked at the director with something close to wonder. How is this possible? We had 200 ships before the attack. Now you tell me we have almost 1,000? Okonkwo smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had kept secrets for decades and was finally allowed to speak. The Prometheus Protocol, he said, started 173 years ago, shortly after humanity joined the Conquered. Our founders understood something that later generations forgot. They understood that the galaxy could not be trusted. They understood that one day, someone would try to destroy us. He led her through a massive doorway into a chamber so large it took her breath away. Row after row of warships stretched into the distance. Black hulls, sharp angles, weapons systems unlike anything in the Conquered registry. These were not the elegant curved vessels that humans had shown the galaxy. These were something else entirely. We built them in secret, Okonkwo continued. In asteroids, in moons, in places no one would ever look. We recruited engineers and scientists who understood the need for silence. We developed technologies that we never shared with anyone. We prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Helena walked toward the nearest ship. It towered above her, dark and deadly. On its hull, a name was painted in white letters, HSS Retribution. The ships are only part of it, Okonkwo said. We also developed new weapons, cascade cannons that can tear through any shield the Concord has ever built, phantom drives that allow micro-jumps in combat, making our ships almost impossible to target, null field generators that disable enemy weapons at close range. The galaxy thinks they know human technology. They know nothing. Helena touched the cold metal of the ship's hull. Inside her chest, something was stirring. Something that had been dead since New Geneva. Hope. Why wasn't I told? She asked. I was Fleet Admiral. I should have known. Only 12 people in each generation knew about Prometheus. 12 people who could keep the secret. You would have been told eventually. The attack simply happened first. Helena turned to face him. And now? Now you are in command, Okonkwo said. The ships, the weapons, the soldiers, the entire Prometheus organization, it's yours. Build the fleet, train the crews, and when you're ready, show the galaxy what humanity can do when pushed too far. Across human space, in hidden facilities that stretched from Europa to the Oort cloud, the same scene was playing out. Survivors of the attack were being recruited. Engineers who had lost families were designing new weapons. Scientists who had watched colonies burn were creating new technologies. Soldiers who had buried their friends were training for war. Marcus Chen arrived at the Kuiper facility 3 weeks after Admiral Vance. He had been handpicked by her personally, pulled from the defense fleet, and brought to a place he never knew existed. He stood in a briefing room with 50 other survivors. All of them had lost someone. All of them had that same look in their eyes, that cold, patient rage that had become humanity's defining feature. Admiral Vance entered the room. The survivors stood at attention. She waved them down and looked at each of them in turn. You're here because you survived, she said. You're here because you fought. You're here because when the galaxy tried to kill us, you refused to die. But survival is no longer enough. Fighting is no longer enough. Now we need something more. She pressed a button and a hologram appeared behind her. A warship, sleek and deadly. This is the HSS Retribution, first of its kind. Most powerful ship humanity has ever built. It needs a captain. Someone who knows what we lost. Someone who will never forget. Someone who will look at our enemies and feel no mercy, no hesitation, no doubt. Her eyes found Marcus Chen in the crowd. "Captain Chen, step forward." Marcus stepped forward. His heart was pounding, but his face showed nothing. He had learned to hide his emotions in the months since Mars. Emotions were weakness. Emotions were distraction. All that mattered now was the mission. "Sir," he said. "You lost your wife and daughter on Mars," Vance said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir." "You killed 47 Velkari soldiers during the retreat. You saved 17 civilians. You refused to sleep for 4 days, refused medical treatment, refused to stop fighting until every person under your protection was safe." "Yes, sir." Vance nodded slowly. "Some would say that makes you dangerous, unstable, a liability." She paused. "I say it makes you exactly what we need. You have rage, Captain. Good. We all have rage. But you also have control. You also have purpose. And you have something else, something that cannot be taught or trained." "What is that, sir?" "You understand what we're fighting for. Not revenge, not hatred, not the simple pleasure of watching our enemies burn. We're fighting for the people who can't fight anymore. We're fighting for the colonies that will never be rebuilt. We're fighting for the children who will never grow up." Her voice softened, just slightly. "We're fighting for a little girl who just wanted to visit Earth someday." Marcus felt something crack inside him. For a moment, just a moment, he was back on Mars, holding his daughter, promising to come back. He forced the memory down, locked it away. He would take it out later. When the war was over, when the killing was done, when he had earned the right to grieve. "I understand, sir," he said. "Then the retribution is yours. Build your crew. Train your people. Learn every system, every weapon, every capability. Because when the time comes when we finally show ourselves to the galaxy, you will be at the front. You will be the first thing our enemies see, and you will be the last thing many of them ever see." Marcus saluted. "It will be done, sir." The months that followed were the hardest of his life. Harder than the attack, harder than the retreat, harder than the endless nights staring at the stars and wondering why he was still alive. He trained 18 hours a day. He learned every system on the Retribution. He memorized the specifications of every Velkari ship, every Concord weapon, every tactical formation the galaxy had ever used. He sparred with combat instructors until his body was covered in bruises. He ran battle simulations until he could fight in his sleep. His crew was chosen from the best humanity had left. Each of them had lost someone. Each of them had that same cold fire burning inside. They did not talk about their pasts. They did not share their grief. They simply trained and prepared and waited for the day they would finally be unleashed. In the Velkari Dominion, time passed differently. The initial fear faded. The missing scouts were written off as accidents or deserters. The High Command returned to its comfortable certainty. Humanity was finished. The war was over. There was nothing left to fear. High Archon Theseus held a grand celebration on the anniversary of the attack. He called it Liberation Day. Across Velkari space, citizens cheered and danced. They celebrated the end of the human threat. They toasted to a future without competition, without challenge, without the unsettling presence of those strange creatures who bred too fast and adapted too well. On Thesson Prime, a Velkari military world, General Voxus watched the celebrations with satisfaction. His forces had been the tip of the spear, the first to strike, the ones who had broken humanity's back. He had received medals and honors and a permanent place in Velkari history. He stood on his balcony and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the remnants of humanity were huddled in their home system, slowly dying. He almost felt pity for them. Almost. "They never stood a chance," he said to his aide. "Humans were always too trusting. Too soft. They believed in friendship and cooperation and peace. Such weakness could only end one way." His aide nodded. "Shall I prepare your speech for the celebration, General?" "Yes. Make it triumphant." Make it clear that the Velkari Dominion is now the dominant power in this sector. Make it clear that no one will ever threaten us again. In the darkness of space, far beyond Velkari sensors, a single human probe recorded the celebration. It transmitted its data back to Sol, where analysts studied every word, every image, every piece of intelligence they could gather. Admiral Vance received the report in her quarters on the Prometheus station. She read it carefully, then set it aside. Outside her window, the final ships of the Reckoning Fleet were being assembled. 847 vessels, soon to be over 1,000. The largest human fleet ever built, the most powerful force humanity had ever created, and completely unknown to the galaxy. She opened a communication channel to Captain Chen on the Retribution. His face appeared on screen, older than his years, hardened by pain and purpose. "Captain," she said, "how is your crew?" "Ready, sir. They've been ready for months." "Good, because it's almost time." Marcus leaned forward. "When?" 3 weeks. We launch in 3 weeks. The Velkari are celebrating. They think we're dead. They think they're safe." A cold smile crossed her face. "They're wrong." In the massive bay of the Kuiper facility, the final preparations began. Ships were loaded with weapons and supplies. Crews took their positions. Engineers made last-minute adjustments. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution. His crew worked around him, checking systems, running diagnostics, preparing for war. Through the viewport, he could see hundreds of other ships doing the same. A fleet of vengeance, a fleet of justice, a fleet of humanity's darkest hour and brightest hope. He thought about his daughter, about the promise he had made, about the crater on Mars where his family had died. He had promised to come back. He had failed that promise, but he would keep another promise. He would make sure that no human child ever suffered what his daughter had suffered. He would make sure that the galaxy learned the price of betraying humanity. He would make sure that the Velkari and the Concord and everyone who had turned away understood exactly what they had unleashed. The bay doors began to open. Stars appeared in the widening gap, cold, distant, waiting. Marcus Chen looked at those stars and felt nothing but purpose. "All ships," Admiral Vance's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "Prepare for departure. Today we leave the shadows. Today we remind the galaxy that humanity is not dead. Today we show them what happens when you push us too far." The Reckoning Fleet began to move. 800 warships, black as night, deadly as sin. They flew in perfect formation, a river of steel and fury flowing toward the stars. The silence was over. The thunder was about to begin. Thesan Prime was a fortress world. 300 Velkari warships orbited the planet. Defense platforms bristled with weapons. Ground installations housed millions of soldiers. It was the staging ground for the Velkari military, the iron fist of the Dominion. General Voxus had made it his home after the human campaign. He liked the power it represented. He liked watching his ships patrol the skies, knowing that nothing in the galaxy could challenge them. He was reviewing troop deployments when the alarms started. At first, he thought it was a drill. His officers often ran exercises to keep the men sharp. But the sound was different, higher, more urgent, and his aide's face had gone pale. "General," the aide stammered. "Ships. Hundreds of ships. They just appeared at the edge of the system." Voxus frowned. "Whose ships? The Morovi? The Thanari?" "Unknown configuration, sir. Our sensors don't recognize them." That was impossible. The Velkari database contained every ship design in the galaxy. Every species, every vessel, every weapon system. If the sensors did not recognize these ships, then they were something new, something that had never been seen before. Voxus walked to the command center. Officers rushed around him, shouting orders, pulling up sensor data. The main display showed the edge of the system, where a massive fleet had materialized from faster-than-light travel, 812 ships, all black, all angular, all wrong. Magnify, Voxus ordered. The display zoomed in on the lead ship. It was enormous, easily twice the size of a Velkari battlecruiser. Its hull was covered in weapons Voxus did not recognize, and on its side, painted in white letters that seemed to glow against the darkness, was a name. HSS Retribution. Voxus felt his blood freeze. "No," he whispered. "No. That's impossible." A communications signal cut through the noise of the command center. Every screen, every speaker, every display suddenly showed the same image. A human woman in a military uniform, gray hair, hard eyes, a face that had haunted Velkari intelligence reports for decades. Admiral Helena Vance smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "General Voxus," she said, "I remember you. You planned the attack on my people. You chose the targets. You gave the orders that killed 3 billion human beings." She paused. "I wanted you to be the first to see us return." Voxus found his voice. "This is impossible. Our scouts reported nothing. Your fleet was destroyed. Your species was broken." "Your scouts are dead, General. All of them. We've been watching you for months, listening to your communications, learning your patrol routes, studying your weaknesses." Her smile widened. "You thought you knew us. You thought we were soft. You thought trust made us weak. You were wrong." The display behind her changed, showing the human fleet in formation. Ships moved with perfect coordination, spreading out to surround the system. "You have 300 ships," Vance continued. "We have over 800. Your weapons are designed to fight the species you know. Ours are designed to destroy everything. You can surrender now and face justice for your crimes, or you can fight and die. The choice is yours." Voxus made his choice in an instant. He had not risen to his position by surrendering. He had not led the attack on humanity by being a coward. These humans were bluffing. They had to be bluffing. Numbers meant nothing against Velkari technology and training. "All ships," he commanded. "Battle formation, destroy them." 300 Velkari warships turned toward the human fleet, their weapons charged, their shields activated, their crews prepared for a battle they were certain they would win. They were wrong. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency. No panic, no fear, only purpose. "Enemy fleet is advancing," his tactical officer reported. 300 ships. Standard Velkari formation. They're charging weapons." Marcus nodded. He had studied this formation. He knew every weakness, every blind spot, every vulnerability. The Velkari fought the same way they had for centuries. They had never needed to change. No one had ever challenged them. That was about to change. "All ships," he said into the fleet channel. "Execute pattern Alpha. Weapons free." The human fleet moved, not in the orderly lines the galaxy was used to, not in the predictable formations that every species had learned. Human ships scattered and regrouped, split apart and came together, moving like a living thing that the Velkari had never seen before. The first shots were fired. Velkari weapons hit human shields. The shields held. Human weapons hit Velkari shields. The shields shattered. Cascade cannons tore through Velkari armor like it was paper. The weapons worked by creating a cascading energy reaction that fed on the target's own power systems. The more energy a ship had, the more damage it took. Velkari battlecruisers, built to power massive weapons and thick shields, became their own worst enemies. The first Velkari ship exploded 3 minutes into the battle. Then another, then another. General Voxus watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. "Impossible," he kept saying. "Impossible!" His tactical displays showed ship after ship going dark. His communications were filled with screaming and static. "Sir," his aide said, voice shaking, "they're too fast. Our targeting systems can't lock on. It's like they know where we're going to fire before we fire." The Phantom drives. Voxus had read about theoretical, faster-than-light combat, the idea of ships that could jump short distances in the middle of a battle. Every scientist in the galaxy had said it was impossible. The calculations were too complex. The energy requirements were too high. No computer could process the variables fast enough. Human computers could. The Retribution appeared directly behind a Velkhari command ship. It had been 5 kilometers away a second ago. Now it was right there, weapons already firing. The command ship never had a chance. Marcus Chen watched the enemy ship die and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not joy, not even rage. Just a cold acknowledgement of a task completed. One less enemy, one step closer to the end. Multiple targets destroyed, his tactical officer reported. Enemy formation breaking apart. They're trying to retreat. Don't let them, Marcus said. Chase them down. Every ship that escapes is a ship that might hurt humans again. No one escapes. The pursuit was brutal. Velkhari ships tried to run, tried to hide, tried to surrender. Some surrenders were accepted. Others came too late. The human fleet moved through them like a scythe through wheat. 4 hours after the battle began, it was over. 340 Velkhari ships destroyed. The planet's orbital defenses reduced to debris. Military installations on the surface burned from precision strikes. General Voxus's command center was a crater. Human losses, 12 ships, 47 crew members, each name recorded, each family notified, each death remembered. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge of her flagship, the HSS Nemesis. She looked at the destruction and allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. Not joy, never joy, but satisfaction that justice had begun. Open a channel, she ordered. All Concord frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Her communications officer complied. Across the galaxy, every species with receivers capable of picking up the signal heard what came next. This is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Human Fleet. 1 year ago, the Velkhari Dominion, with the knowledge and support of the Galactic Concord, attacked humanity without warning or provocation. 3 billion of our people were murdered. Our colonies were destroyed. Our trust was betrayed. She paused, letting the words sink in. You called us weak. You called us finished. You thought that because we valued peace and friendship, we could not make war. You were wrong. The attack you see before you is only the beginning. We will pursue the Velkhari to every world, every station, every ship. We will dismantle their military. We will bring their leaders to justice. And we will show the galaxy what happens when you betray humanity. Her voice hardened. To the Velkhari, your worlds will burn until you answer for your crimes. To the Concord, your silence was your choice. You watched 3 billion humans die and did nothing. Some of you helped our enemies. Some of you blocked our distress signals. Some of you leaked our military secrets. We know. We have records. We have names. The threat hung in the air. We do not seek war with the Concord. We do not seek revenge against species who simply stood aside. But make no mistake, if you interfere with our pursuit of justice, you will be treated as enemies. If you aid the Velkhari, you will share their fate. And if you ever threaten humanity again, you will face the full power of our fleet. She let the silence stretch for a moment. You thought you knew us? You were wrong. This is humanity. Remember it. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, alien species watched the battle recordings in stunned disbelief. They saw Velkhari ships explode. They saw human weapons that should not exist. They saw tactics that no military academy had ever taught. They saw something new in the universe, something dangerous. On Velkhara Prime, High Archon Theseus received the news in his throne room. His advisors crowded around him, their faces pale with shock. The celebrations of Liberation Day seemed like a cruel joke now. How many ships do they have? He demanded. Over 800, an advisor replied. But sir, the technology they used, the weapons, the drives, we have nothing that can match them. Our entire fleet would not be enough. Theseus felt fear, real fear, for the first time in his long life. He had built his career on the assumption of Velkhari superiority. He had ordered the attack on humanity because he believed they could never fight back. He had been so certain. "Contact the Concord," he ordered. "Invoke the mutual defense treaties. Demand that they intervene." "Sir, the humans made it clear that anyone who helps us will be treated as an enemy." "Then they will have to choose," Theseus snapped. "Either the Concord stands together, or humanity will destroy us one by one. They must understand that." The message was sent. The Concord Council convened in emergency session. Representatives from 12 species argued and debated. Some wanted to help the Velkari, others wanted to stay neutral. Others secretly hoped humanity would win. The Thanari ambassador, a creature of flowing water and shifting form, spoke first. "We should aid the Velkari. If humanity is not stopped now, they will dominate the galaxy within a century." "And how do you propose we stop them?" the Moravi representative demanded. His species had the largest fleet in the Concord after the Velkari. "Did you see those battle recordings? Our ships cannot match theirs. Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields. We would be throwing lives away." "Then we must negotiate. Perhaps the humans can be reasoned with. Perhaps we can offer them something they want." "We had 200 years to be reasonable," the Xanthus Collective's delegate said, their multiple mouths speaking in harmony. "We chose instead to watch them burn. Why would they listen to us now?" The debate went on for days. In the end, the Concord decided on a compromise. 3 species would send a combined fleet to reinforce the Velkari. The others would remain neutral but provide economic support. It was not the united front the Velkari wanted, but it was something. The news reached Admiral Vance at the edge of Velkari space. Her fleet had destroyed 2 more military installations and was preparing for the next target. "The Thanari, Moravi, and Drax are sending ships to aid the Velkari," her intelligence officer reported. "Combined fleet of approximately 100 vessels. They'll arrive at the Velkari border in 2 weeks. Vance nodded slowly. She had expected this. She had hoped it would not happen, but she had expected it. "Contact our intelligence division," she ordered. "I want everything we have on those 3 species. Every communication they made before the attack. Every message they sent during the attack. Every order they gave that helped the Velkari." Her officer frowned. "Sir? They want to pretend they're innocent? They want to claim they're only defending an ally? Fine. Let's see how innocent they look when the galaxy sees the truth." 2 weeks later, the Concord Relief Fleet arrived at the Velkari border. Their commanders were confident. 100 ships against a human fleet that was scattered across multiple systems. Even with human technology, the numbers should matter. They were met by a single human vessel, a courier ship, unarmed, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention Concord Fleet," the message said. "This is the United Human Fleet. Before you proceed, we wish to share some information with you and with the galaxy." Every communication channel suddenly filled with data, documents, recordings, messages, intelligence reports that should have been classified forever. The Thanari had known about the attack 3 months before it happened. They had helped the Velkari plan it. The Moravi had provided the jamming technology that blocked human distress signals. The Drax had given the Velkari detailed maps of human space, including the locations of civilian shelters. The evidence was overwhelming, time-stamped, verified, impossible to deny. The Concord fleet stopped. On the bridge of the lead ship, the Thanari admiral watched the data scroll across his screens and felt his future crumble. "This was supposed to be secret," he whispered. "No one was supposed to know." The human courier ship broadcast one final message. "You have a choice. Turn around and face your own people with the truth of what you did, or continue forward and face us. Choose wisely." The Concord fleet turned around. On 100 worlds, citizens of a dozen species watched the revelations in horror. They had been told the attack on humanity was necessary. They had been told it was justice. They had been told humans were dangerous and needed to be stopped. Now they knew the truth, and the truth changed everything. In the darkness between stars, Marcus Chen received word of the Concord's retreat. His crew cheered. He did not join them. "It's not enough," he said quietly. "Turning back is not enough. They helped murder billions. They don't get to walk away." His first officer, a woman named Sarah Webb, who had lost her parents on New Geneva, nodded. "What do we do?" Marcus looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the people who had killed his family were still breathing, still living, still thinking they might survive. "We continue," he said. "We don't stop until every person responsible faces justice. We don't stop until the galaxy understands what they allowed to happen. We don't stop until my daughter's death means something." The Retribution turned toward its next target. Behind it, the human fleet followed. Ahead, the Velkari Dominion waited, slowly understanding that their doom was approaching. The first battle was over. The war had just begun. 18 months of war, 18 months of fire and blood and justice. The human fleet carved through Velkari space like a blade through flesh. System by system, world by world, military base by military base. The Dominion that had stood for 10,000 years crumbled before the fury of a species it had tried to destroy. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched another Velkari station burn. The flames reflected in his eyes, orange and red against the darkness of space. His crew worked around him, tracking targets, coordinating strikes, doing the work of war. "Station destroyed," his tactical officer reported. "No survivors." Marcus nodded. He felt nothing. That was the problem. He should feel something, satisfaction at least, justice, perhaps. But there was only emptiness where his emotions used to be. "Move to the next target," he ordered. "The supply depot at Kalesh." His first officer, Sarah Webb, moved closer. "Marcus," she said quietly, "when did you last sleep?" "I don't remember." "That's the problem. You need rest. The crew needs their captain at full strength." He turned to look at her. Her face was thin from months of combat rations. Her eyes had the same haunted look that every human wore now. But there was still something alive in them, still something human. "I'll rest when it's over," he said, "when we've won." "And what happens then? What happens when there's no more war to fight?" He didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. The campaign had been everything the military planners promised and worse. Human tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They struck without warning, disappeared before reinforcements could arrive, and struck again somewhere else. They broadcast the names and faces of human victims before every major battle. They reminded the Velkari over and over why this war was happening. Some battles were quick and decisive. Human technology was simply superior. Cascade cannons tore through shields. Phantom drives made human ships impossible to predict. Null field generators left enemy ships helpless and drifting. Other battles were harder. The Velkari learned slowly how to fight back. They developed new tactics. They modified their ships. They fought with the desperation of a species that knew it was losing. None of it mattered. The human fleet was relentless. Admiral Helena Vance coordinated the campaign from her flagship. She studied reports, made decisions, sent orders that determined the fate of millions. She rarely slept. She rarely ate. She had become something more than human, and less than human at the same time. One night, alone in her quarters, she looked in the mirror and did not recognize the face staring back at her. Gray hair that had been brown 2 years ago. Lines carved by grief and rage, eyes that had seen too much death. "What are we becoming?" she whispered to herself. There was no answer. There never was. 3 months into the campaign, the first moral test arrived. The Retribution tracked a convoy of Velkari ships to a remote system. Sensors showed 12 vessels, lightly armed, moving slowly toward the border. Configuration suggests civilian transports, the tactical officer reported. Probably refugees fleeing the war zone. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Refugees, families, children maybe. Velkari children, but still children. Orders, Captain? His crew waited. Some of them wanted blood. He could see it in their eyes. The Velkari had shown no mercy to human civilians. Why should humans be any different? Marcus thought about his daughter. About the shelter that should have protected her. About the promises he had made. Scan for weapons, he said. Full spectrum analysis. The scan took 30 seconds. Negative on weapons, Captain. These ships have no offensive capability. They're running on minimal power, probably to avoid detection. Life signs? Approximately 4,000 Velkari, mix of ages. Significant number of juveniles. 4,000 civilians. 4,000 people who had probably never held a weapon. 4,000 potential deaths that would haunt him forever. Sir, his tactical officer prompted. Standing orders say we engage all Velkari vessels. I know what the orders say. Marcus closed his eyes. He saw his daughter's face. He heard her laugh. He remembered the last time she had called him Daddy. He opened his eyes. Contact the convoy, he ordered. Tell them we're escorting them to the border. Any ship that deviates from course will be destroyed. Any ship that attempts to contact Velkari military will be destroyed. But if they follow instructions, they will reach safety. His crew stared at him, some with relief, some with confusion, some with barely concealed anger. Sir, the tactical officer said carefully, the Admiral's orders were clear, no exceptions. Then the Admiral can court-martial me when this is over. I didn't survive the attack to become the thing I hate. I didn't lose my family so I could orphan other families. We are not them. He looked at his crew, one face at a time. We will never be them. The convoy was escorted to the border without incident. 4,000 Velkari civilians survived because one human captain remembered why he was fighting. Word spread through the fleet. Some commanders followed Marcus's example. Others did not. The campaign continued, brutal and bloody, but with moments of mercy that surprised everyone. Admiral Vance received reports of these incidents. She said nothing officially, but she did not punish the commanders who showed restraint. And late at night, in the privacy of her quarters, she allowed herself to feel something other than rage for the first time in months. The Galactic Concord watched the war with growing unease. 3 species had already been humiliated when their involvement in the attack was revealed. Others were quietly distancing themselves from the Velkari, hoping to avoid human attention. The Thenari ambassador, the same one who had argued for intervention, requested a private meeting with Admiral Vance. It took place on neutral ground, a space station that had been abandoned since the war began. Admiral? The Thenari said, his watery form shifting nervously. We must discuss terms. Terms? Vance raised an eyebrow. You're not in a position to discuss terms. Please, the Thenari people were not responsible for the actions of our government. We did not know about the attack until it happened. Most of us are horrified by what was done in our name. Your government knew, your military knew, your intelligence services helped plan it. Yes, and those individuals should face justice. But the ordinary Thenari, the families and workers and children who had nothing to do with this war, they should not suffer for the sins of their leaders. Vance studied the alien for a long moment. She could destroy the Thenari if she wanted. Human technology was advanced enough now. The fleet was large enough. She could burn their worlds the way the Velkari had burned human colonies. But that was not why she had built this fleet. That was not why she had spent 2 years preparing for this war. Destruction was easy. Justice was harder. What are you offering? She asked. The negotiations lasted 3 weeks. In the end, the Thenari agreed to full disclosure of their involvement, public acknowledgement of their guilt, and substantial reparations paid over 50 years. Their military leaders who had aided the attack were surrendered to human custody. In exchange, humanity agreed to peace with the Thanari people. Similar negotiations followed with the Moravi and the Drax. Each species faced the truth of what they had done. Each species paid a price, but they were allowed to survive. The Concord began to fracture. Species that had been allies for millennia now looked at each other with suspicion. Old grievances surfaced. New alliances formed. The power structure that had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years was falling apart. And at the center of it all, humanity continued its march toward Velkara Prime. Marcus Chen received word of the negotiations while refueling at a captured station. He read the reports and felt something unexpected: pride. Humanity was winning the war without becoming monsters. They were achieving justice without genocide. They were proving that strength and mercy could exist together. He thought about his daughter again. He wondered if she would be proud of him. He wondered if the person he was becoming was someone she would recognize. His communicator beeped. A personal message from Admiral Vance. "Captain Chen, report to the Nemesis immediately. We need to discuss the final phase." He arrived on the flagship an hour later. Admiral Vance met him in her private briefing room. She looked tired. They all looked tired now. "The Velkari are finished," she said without preamble. "Their military is destroyed. Their allies have abandoned them. Their economy is collapsing. All that remains is the homeworld." Marcus nodded. He had known this moment was coming. He had dreamed about it for 2 years. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Vance pulled up a holographic display of Velkara Prime. A beautiful world, blue and green, much like Earth. Cities sparkled on its surface. Billions of Velkari lived there, most of them civilians who had never held a weapon. "High Archon Theseus refuses to surrender," she said. "He believes we won't actually destroy a homeworld. He thinks if he holds out long enough, the galaxy will intervene." "Will they?" "No. The Concord is broken. No one is coming to save them." She paused. "But that doesn't mean we should do what he thinks we won't do." Marcus looked at the image of the planet. Somewhere down there, in one of those cities, Velkari children were going to school. Velkari parents were going to work. Velkari families were living their lives afraid of what was coming but hoping it would pass. "What do you want me to do, Admiral?" Vance turned off the display. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something other than determination in them. He saw doubt. "I want you to lead the final assault," she said. "I want you to be the one who faces Theseus. I want you to decide what humanity does when we have absolute power over our enemies." "Why me?" "Because you let that convoy go. Because you refused to kill civilians even when you had every right to hate them. Because you remember what we're fighting for." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "I've spent 2 years building a weapon. I need someone who knows when not to use it." Marcus thought about her words for a long time. He thought about his wife and daughter. He thought about the crater on Mars. He thought about the 4,000 Velkari civilians who were alive because he had made a choice. "I'll do it," he said finally. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "We give them one chance, real chance, not a performance. We offer terms that are harsh but survivable. If they refuse, we do what we have to do, but we offer first. We prove that humanity is better than what they did to us." Vance nodded slowly. "Agreed." Marcus straightened. "Then I should prepare. We have a war to end." He walked out of the briefing room and headed for his ship. The retribution was waiting for him, dark and deadly, a weapon built for vengeance. But maybe, just maybe, it could be something else too. Maybe it could be the ship that brought peace. He thought about his daughter one last time, about her smile, about her laugh, about the future she would never have. "I'm doing this for you," he whispered. "All of it. Everything I've done and everything I'm about to do. I hope you understand. I hope wherever you are, you can forgive me for the things I had to become." The stars did not answer, but for the first time in 2 years, Marcus Chen felt something other than rage. He felt hope. The final battle was coming. The fate of 2 species would be decided, and one man, broken by grief and rebuilt by purpose, would stand at the center of it all. He boarded the Retribution and gave the order to move out. Behind him, the largest human fleet ever assembled followed. Ahead, Velkara Prime waited, home to the species that had tried to destroy humanity. The end was near. The question was what kind of end it would be. Velkara Prime hung in the viewport like a jewel against the darkness. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling over mountains and valleys. It was beautiful. Perhaps the most beautiful world in the galaxy. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at that world. Behind him, 1,000 human warships waited in formation. The largest fleet in human history, armed with the deadliest weapons ever created, pointed at a planet of 12 billion souls. "All ships in position, Captain," his tactical officer reported. "Weapons charged, shields at maximum. We're ready." Ready to destroy a civilization. Ready to end a species. Ready to become the very thing they had fought against. Marcus thought about that for a long moment. He thought about his wife and daughter. He thought about the 3 billion humans who had died in the attack. He thought about the rage that had driven him for 2 years. And he thought about the convoy of refugees he had saved. About the look on those Velkari faces when they realized they would live. About the choice he had made to be better than his enemies. "Open a channel," he said. "All frequencies. I want every ship in orbit and every receiver on that planet to hear this." His communications officer complied. Marcus took a breath and began to speak. "High Archon Theseus, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the United Human Fleet. Your military is destroyed. Your allies have abandoned you. Your people are surrounded by a force you cannot defeat. The war is over." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I am authorized to offer terms. Full accountability for the attack on humanity, war reparations to be paid over the next 200 years, complete dismantling of the Velkari military. All government officials involved in planning the attack will be surrendered to face trial for their crimes." On the planet below, in his palace, High Archon Theseus watched the transmission with cold fury. His advisors surrounded him, their silver faces pale with fear. Outside, the sky was full of human ships, dark shapes blocking out the sun. "These are not negotiations," Theseus said. "These are demands for surrender." "Yes," Marcus's voice continued as if he could hear. "They are. You do not deserve negotiations. You do not deserve mercy. You murdered 3 billion people. You attacked civilians. You targeted children. You did this while smiling at us, while calling us friends, while pretending to be our allies." His voice hardened. "But humanity is not like you. We could destroy your world. We have the power. We have the right. Every life you took screams for vengeance. Every orphan, every widow, every parent who buried their child demands that we burn your cities the way you burned ours." Theseus leaned forward, waiting for the threat, waiting for the ultimatum. "But we choose differently," Marcus said. "We choose to be what you never were. We choose to offer mercy even when mercy was denied to us. We choose to build a future instead of extending the past." In his palace, Theseus laughed. It was a bitter, desperate sound. "Mercy? You speak of mercy while your fleet surrounds my world? This is not mercy. This is conquest dressed in pretty words." "No," Marcus replied. "This is a choice. You can accept our terms and survive. Your people can live. Your culture can continue. Your children can grow up in a galaxy that has learned from this war. Or you can refuse and face the consequences." "What consequences?" "You just said you choose mercy. Mercy for the innocent, not for the guilty." Marcus's voice was ice. "If you refuse, we will not burn your world. We will not murder your civilians, but we will find every person who planned the attack. Every officer who gave orders, every politician who approved, every intelligence agent who leaked human secrets. We will find them and we will take them, one by one, and they will face justice. You, High Archon, will be first. Theseus felt cold fear spreading through his body. The humans were not bluffing. They had proven, over 18 months of war, that they could do exactly what they promised. And if I agree to your terms, then you come with us willingly. You face trial. If found guilty, you face punishment. But your people live. Your world survives. And in 100 years, when the reparations are paid and the wounds have healed, the Velkhari might even be welcome in the new order we're building. The High Archon looked at his advisors. They looked back at him with desperate, pleading eyes. They wanted him to surrender. They wanted to live. He thought about his pride, about his legacy, about 10,000 years of Velkhari dominance. And then he thought about the human fleet, waiting patiently above his world, capable of destruction beyond imagination, but offering peace instead. How do I know you'll keep your word? He asked finally. You don't, Marcus admitted. Just like we didn't know if you would keep yours when you called us friends. The difference is, we're giving you a choice. You never gave us one. The silence stretched for a long moment. In that silence, the fate of two species balanced on a knife's edge. I accept your terms, Theseus said. His voice was hollow, defeated. I surrender myself and my government to human custody. Marcus closed his eyes. He felt something release in his chest, something that had been wound tight for 2 years. Relief. And something else, something that felt almost like peace. Stand by for transport coordinates, he said. The war is over. The days that followed were chaos and order mixed together. Human ships landed on Velkhara Prime, not as conquerors, but as administrators. Velkhari military leaders were arrested by the hundreds. Government officials were processed and evaluated. Some were released as innocent. Others were taken to face trial. High Archon Theseus was tried before a tribunal of humans and representatives from species that had suffered under Velkhari aggression. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was life imprisonment on a barren moon, alone with his thoughts and his crimes. He accepted the sentence without protest. He had seen what humanity was capable of. Prison was mercy compared to what could have been. Admiral Helena Vance watched the proceedings from her flagship. When it was over, when the last criminal had been sentenced and the last ship had stood down, she allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in years. Pride, real pride, not in the victory, but in the way it had been achieved. She opened a communication channel to Captain Chen, who was overseeing relief operations on the planet's surface. Captain, you did well. Marcus looked up at the sky, at the human ships that had brought justice instead of destruction. We all did, Admiral. Everyone who fought. Everyone who remembered why we were fighting. What will you do now? The war is over. There's no more enemy to chase. He thought about the question. For 2 years, revenge had been his purpose. Now that purpose was fulfilled. What came next? I think I'll go home, he said. Back to Mars. I have some people to visit. Mars Colony 7 had been rebuilt. It had taken time and resources that humanity could barely spare, but the colony had risen from the ashes. New buildings stood where old ones had fallen. Parks and gardens grew where craters had been. Marcus Chen walked through the streets he had once run through, carrying his daughter, fleeing the end of the world. Everything was different. Everything was the same. He found the memorial at the center of the colony, a simple wall of names, stretching for hundreds of meters. Every person who had died in the attack, every life that had been stolen. He found his wife's name. He found his daughter's name. He stood before them and let himself feel, finally, what he had been running from for 3 years. The tears came. They came and would not stop. He wept for his family. He wept for his species. He wept for the person he had been and the person he had become. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I said I would make them answer for what they did. I said I would make your death mean something." He placed his hand on his daughter's name, carved in cold stone. "I hope it was enough. I hope wherever you are, you can forgive me." A small hand tugged at his sleeve. He looked down. A child stood beside him, a Velkari child, silver skin and 4 arms, wearing human clothes. The child could not have been more than 6 or 7 years old. "Are you sad?" the child asked in broken English. Marcus stared. A Velkari child on Mars, on human soil, in the colony where his daughter had died. "Yes," he said finally. "I am sad." "I am sad too," the child said. "My parents died in the war. The humans brought me here. They said I could have a new family." Marcus felt something crack inside him, something that had been hard and cold since the day he lost everything. "What's your name?" he asked. "Kira. The humans gave me that name. It means hope." Hope. A Velkari orphan named Hope, adopted by humans, standing in the shadow of a memorial to human dead. Marcus looked at the child. He looked at the memorial. He looked at the sky, where human and Velkari ships now flew together, beginning the long work of rebuilding. "Kira," he said, "would you like to hear about my daughter? Her name was Emma. She was about your age." The child nodded. Marcus sat down on a nearby bench, and Kira sat beside him. He began to talk about Emma's laugh, about her favorite toys, about the stories she loved and the dreams she had. It was not forgiveness, it was not healing, but it was a beginning. 1 year later, Admiral Helena Vance stood before the Galactic Assembly. The hall was enormous, filled with representatives from dozens of species. Where once there had been the Concord, now there was something new, something different. "We called it the Terran Accord," Vance said, "not because humans rule it, not because we demand worship or obedience. We called it that because humans built it. From the ashes of betrayal, from the ruins of trust, we built something new." She looked at the assembled delegates. Some had been enemies, some had been neutral, some had helped murder her people. All of them were listening. The old Concord failed because it had no consequences. Species could betray each other, murder each other, watch each other burn, and face no punishment. The Terran Accord is different. Every member signs a covenant. Every member accepts oversight. Every member understands that betrayal will be answered. She paused. "This is not a threat. This is a promise. Humanity learned, the hard way, what happens when you trust without verification. We will never make that mistake again. But we also learned something else. We learned that vengeance without purpose is just destruction. We learned that strength without mercy is just tyranny. We learned that even in our darkest hour, we could choose to be better than our enemies." Her voice softened. "You called us young. You called us weak. You called us naive for believing in friendship, in trust, in peace. Perhaps we were. But we learned. We learned that kindness is not weakness, that mercy is not surrender, and that humanity, when united, when determined, when wronged, is a force this galaxy had never truly seen." She straightened. "We do not seek empire. We do not seek revenge. But make no mistake, we will never again be victims. We will never again be betrayed without answer. The stars belong to those brave enough to reach for them and wise enough to protect what they hold dear." The assembly was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. First from the species who had stayed neutral, then from those who had opposed, then from former enemies who had learned painfully what humanity could do. Admiral Vance accepted the applause without smiling. This was not a celebration. It was a warning and a promise, wrapped together. Later that night, she stood alone on the observation deck of the assembly station. Stars stretched before her, infinite and cold. Somewhere out there, human children were being born on rebuilt colonies. Velkari orphans were learning human languages. Former enemies were becoming trading partners. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had changed it. Was it worth it? A voice asked behind her. She turned. Captain Marcus Chen stood in the doorway, older now, with gray in his hair and peace in his eyes. I ask myself that every day, she admitted. All those lives lost, all that destruction, all that pain. And what do you answer? She looked back at the stars. I answer that we did what we had to do. We survived. We won. And then we did something harder. We stopped. Marcus nodded. He understood better than anyone. I visited Emma's memorial today, he said. I brought Kira with me. She put flowers on the grave. Vance raised an eyebrow. A Velkari child honoring a human victim? The war is over, Admiral. The healing has begun. It will take generations. It will be painful and difficult, and sometimes it will seem impossible, but it has begun. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Two humans who had seen the worst their species could suffer and the best it could become. Outside the station, ships from a dozen species moved through space. Human designs flew alongside Velkari transports. Trade routes reopened. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity. A galaxy that had tried to destroy humanity was learning to live with it. And in a small colony on Mars, a human man and a Velkari child sat together under alien stars, sharing stories and building something new from the ashes of the old. Humanity had been betrayed. Humanity had been broken. Humanity had risen from the ruins with fire in its heart and steel in its spine. And now, finally, humanity had found something better than revenge. It had found hope.